I have a question that a guy asked last week too, and I didn't get to it, so I was gonna throw it up here and see if we can give him any help. Why do some buck rubs their antlers in the bed or around their bed, and some don't even though they need to loosen the velvet anyways? So, do you have any comments about this, Dan? I think he's maybe referring to why do some bucks rub inside their bed and some of them don't.
Well, I do got some comments on that, and the number one one would be that actually rubbing the velvet off the antlers. I mean, they don't do a lot of that. They do it once or twice, and it's done.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they don't even mark trees that much. There's a lot of myths and a lot of speculation that goes into that. I've seen a couple deer rub velvet off their antlers, and really, other than a couple pieces of velvet laying around that ain't there very long because critters eat it, you couldn't even tell a deer rubbed their antlers there. Um, the rubs that are in beds are there for a reason. Bucks rub for a reason. It's to communicate. It's to mark an area as like mine, or it's to mark an area to say, "Hey, I'm available for a doe." You know, um, when they rub in bedding areas, it's because they're competing for that bedding area. That's why when you have mature bucks bedding in an area, you won't have as many rubs if you're in like public land where there aren't very many big bucks, because he's the only big buck around, and the other bucks that are subordinate, if he's dominant, won't go near him. But you'll have a bedding area that say 2 year olds use, and there's a lot of 2 year olds in the area. That area will be rubbed like crazy with pretty decent rubs. You know, um, when what a buck will do is if other bucks are bedding in his area, he'll rub the tree right inside those beds, and that's to mark that bed as his, because he's competing against another buck that comes in there and beds in that spot. You know, that's another myth that goes around, is that um, when you find a really good bed, you found a buck's bed. Not really true. The same reason that buck is bedding there is the same reason all the other bucks in the area will bed there. And I've watched bedding areas and seen the exact same bed, seen 3 different bucks in 1 week bed in that same bed. Um, but they mark them when there's competition. You know, when you get into an area that has low deer density and has hardly any deer, you have a hard time even seeing the bedding area because you don't have rubs in there to see. You get in areas with high density, there's usually glowing rub lines going into the bedding areas. Like when I go scout private properties for people, sometimes you hunt. You scout very well managed big buck properties that have real high deer densities and high densities of mature bucks, and you would not believe the rub lines going into the bedding areas and how well those bedding areas shine. You know, you can see them from a mile away. Where you get into a piece of public property that's built exactly the same, and you have a hard time determining those spots, even though when a big buck is there, that's where they're bedding. But those rubs in the bedding areas, there's another thing that'll fool you. Um, so doe bedding areas will have rubs too, but they won't be in the beds. They'll be in the perimeters, both downwind and upwind, but all the way around the bedding area and the trails that go through. So they'll be near beds because deer will be in there trying to breed to does and stuff, bucks. But when it's a buck bedding area and there's rubs in the bedding area, they typically are right in the beds.